Hello and welcome to Finish in 5 for Macbeth. This is the fourth of 5 videos, and as with the previous ones, the idea is that we'll talk through a little bit about what's happened already in the play. We'll focus on a key moment and a key extract in each video, and then what happens afterwards as a result. And by watching all 5 of them, the idea is that you basically cover the whole play. So, what's happened so far? Well, the play began with the witches planning their next meeting. There was a battle that was about to happen, and Macbeth. We then saw King Duncan receiving news of a battle in which Macbeth and Banquo had led the Scottish army to victory against pretty much overwhelming odds. Macbeth and Banquo, returning from the battle, had been surprised by the witches, who made a series of prophecies that Macbeth would be king, and that Banquo's descendants would be kings. Now, inspired by the encounter with the witches, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth plotted the murder of King Duncan, and successfully carried it out, framing Duncan's guards. Malcolm and Donalbain, Duncan's sons, both fled the country, terrified for their own lives, leaving Macbeth to claim the throne. Now, in terms of the extracts that we're going to focus on in this video, we're looking at 2 different sections of the text from the same part of the play. Now, in these 2 sections, Banquo and Macbeth both describe their views of each other at this point. For Banquo, he's suspicious about Macbeth's involvement in the murder of Duncan, but also hopeful about his own prophecy coming true. Macbeth is feeling insecure. He's conscious of his own inferiority in comparison to Banquo, and also he's realising that his own actions in becoming king are arguably pointless if all he's doing is preparing the throne for Banquo's children. Macbeth, Extract 4, from Act 3, Scene 1. There's 2 speeches here, and the first is from Banquo. So Extract 1, Banquo. Thou hast it now, King, Corder, Glamis, all as the word women promised, and I fear thou playedst most foully for it. Yet it was said they shouldn't stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings. If there come truth from them, as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine, well, why, by the verities on thee made good, may they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope? But hush, no more. Extract 2 is from Macbeth. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. 'Tis much he dares, and to the doubtless temper of his mind he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valour to act in safety. There is none but he whose being I do fear, and unto him my genius is rebuked, as it is said, Mark Antony's was by Caesar. He chid the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him. And prophet-like they hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren sceptre in my grip, thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. If it be so, for Banquo's issue have I filed my mind. For them the gracious Duncan have I murdered, but rankers in the vessel of my peace only for them, and mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man, to make them kings, the seed of Banquo kings. Rather than so come fate into the list, and champion me to the utterance. Right, let's dissect these two extracts. In the first one, Banquo is speaking to himself. He's clearly no longer able to trust or to confide in his friend Macbeth. Banquo lists, notice, the 3 prophecies from the witches in reverse order: King, Corder, Glamis. Banquo's fear, though, is that Macbeth played most foully for it, that Macbeth has essentially cheated his way to the throne, that he has, we assume, been involved in the murder of Duncan. Banquo, however, seems more focused on his own hopes for success. Macbeth's crown will not stand in thy posterity, will not remain in his family, since it will come eventually to Banquo's descendants. Notice again Banquo's imagery here. Root, the image of plants and growth, associated with Banquo in the play since he has children and therefore a future. Macbeth, in contrast, has no children, despite the fact that Lady Macbeth has. Remember, she's been married before. So Macbeth's royal line will die with him. Banquo's optimism is shown in the semantic field in his speech. We have truth, shine, verities, good, and hope. However, Banquo is also careful to hide his thoughts from everyone around him, as evidenced in the final "Hush, no more." In the second bit we've looked at here, the second extract, we have the reverse perspective. Here, Macbeth is realising that he doesn't feel secure on the throne, and that lack of security, that lack of certainty, is tormenting him. To be thus is nothing, he notes bitterly, since he doesn't feel safely thus. It's also noticeable that his fears are focused on Banquo, and not for the reason we would have assumed, which was that Banquo knows about the witches. Instead, it's Banquo's royalty of nature in which reigns that which would be feared. The semantic field of royalty here is why Macbeth is so troubled. He knows that Banquo is a better man than him, and perhaps even would be a better king. After all, he has a royalty of nature, dares much, has a dauntless temper of his mind, and a wisdom, along with his valour. Banquo is kingly, he's daring, he's brave, he's wise, he's heroic. He's all the things that Macbeth wishes he still were. In fact, Banquo seems to be the only person that Macbeth is scared of. Macbeth gives the example of Banquo's chiding of the witches, as he sees it, telling the witches off when they first gave the prophecies, with Macbeth then seeing the witches as having obeyed Banquo's orders. And remember Macbeth's obsession with giving orders, with that dominant, assertive, masculine power. Even more so, however, his problem with Banquo is one of family. Banquo is father to a line of kings, in contrast to Macbeth's fruitless crown and barren sceptre. Macbeth is bothered here by his own lack of an heir, his lack of fertility, that means there will be no son of mine succeeding. Well, by this line of logic, all Macbeth has achieved by sacrificing everything to this point is to benefit Banquo's issue, Banquo's descendants. Macbeth has lost his reputation, his king, his peace of mind, his soul, all for the seed of Banquo. And again, seed returns us to the image of plants and growth. Macbeth is, of course, planning to kill Banquo here, and it's ironic. He's acted to fulfill what he sees as his fate, but he's now hoping that he can change that fate, that he can change the future by killing Banquo and his son, with List and Champion both seeing Macbeth hoping for fate to, in terms of the image here, come into the jousting on his behalf. Now, in terms of what comes next, well, straight after this scene, Macbeth persuades a group of murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance by blaming Banquo for some problems that occurred to them that we know as an audience was actually probably Macbeth. But the murderers only managed to kill Banquo, leaving Fleance to escape, which means that the prophecy from the witches about Banquo's issue can still be correct. Macbeth then sees Banquo's ghost at a feast. Terrified, he returns to the witches for guidance, only to be told that while he cannot be defeated until the forest walks up to his castle, and he can't be killed by anyone born of a woman, Banquo's children will still be kings, and also that he should beware Macduff. Immediately afterwards, Macbeth hears that Macduff has fled to England to join Malcolm. Macbeth, on the moment, orders the murder of Macduff's family. Macduff, down in England, persuades Malcolm to return to Scotland to reclaim his father's throne, and the two lead an English army to attack Macbeth's castle, joined by the majority of Scottish thanes who have abandoned Macbeth. Lady Macbeth, meanwhile, loses her sanity, and she's consumed by her guilt. And just a final reminder about all those different sources of revision that you have out there available to you. There is, as ever, the recipe book with all the huge amount of stuff in there in terms of quotation banks and protagonist profiles and quick reference guides and all that sort of thing. There's the quotation cards on which you have a set of key quotations from Macbeth. You've got, of course, the quotation of the day that goes out on the NET English Twitter feed. And you've got your Need to Know book, which has a whole range of stuff in as well. Most of all, you have, of course, got access to the NET English YouTube channel, which is NET English 1 on YouTube. And there are literally hundreds of videos on there covering everything you could possibly want to know about Macbeth and every other text that we do. From character profiles to discussions about themes, to quotation explosions, narrative summaries. There's a lot on there. So do please make sure you check that out. Right, and that's the end of this fourth video from the Finish in 5 set of videos on Macbeth. There's one more, which is on Extract 5, and I'll hope to see you in that one.